Guys. I am very happy that we have these three gentlemen here. As you can see, I have next to me Mr. Robert Kennedy Jr. Kennedy 24 is the website. Kennedy 24, if you want to, please have a seat. Next to him is Dr. Michael Rectenwald. Yeah! WreckTheRegime.com also. And lastly, Michael ter Maat at MikeTerMaat.com. Yes, please. Have a seat, gentlemen, please, have a seat. Why are we here this evening? We are here this evening to talk about one of the most important things that's happening right now in America. And if you look at the two political parties, the legacy parties right now, you will see something. Democrats are supposed to be about civil liberties. They're not. Republicans are supposed to be about less spending and less taxation. They're not. But why aren't they? Why do they not even believe in the lies they tell? Right? Why? Because no one holds them accountable. All that matters is other guy bad. That's it. I'm not as bad as the other guy. I know he killed one guy, but I only wounded him, so I'm better than him. And that's where we are right now. What can break that? What can break the legacy parties is independent parties. That's what we can do. You should be clapping now. Yes. And these three people here are running non-legacy. I'm going to talk about how we can fight not just the legacy parties, but also the legacy media. And third, and the hardest one, is the legacy voters and how they think and why they don't make a step, why they don't want to make a change. So I want to ask the first question, if I could, and that question will start with Mr. Kennedy, if I could do so. How do we handle the way the mainstream media ignores and disrespects us?
First of all, thank you for being here. I would say the answer to that is that the mainstream media is less important now than it has ever been in history. CNN's total viewership is, I think, around $400,000 people an evening. And during prime time, Tucker Carlson is getting 40 million viewers. Joe Rogan is getting 10 million per episode. And I think one of the reasons that I'm doing well, I'm now beating President Trump and President Biden among young people under 35 nationwide. The last poll that was taken on that issue shows me beating them with people under 45 in the 6 battleground states. And I'm also beating both of them among independents. And independents this time around are the biggest political party. So it's 52% of the voter independent. I think about 24 and 24 Republicans and Democrats. It's the first election in American history where independents have been the biggest cohort. And I think the reason I'm doing well with those cohorts is that they're getting their news from non-traditional sources. So they're getting it from podcasts. The one group that I'm doing poorly with is the people I should be doing best with, which is baby boomers. And it's because baby boomers get their news from MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, The Washington Post, The New York Times. And if I was living in that information ecosystem, I'd have a very low opinion of myself too. I'm not allowed to do interviews on those, I'm not allowed to do live interviews for the last 10 years on any of those platforms. So they'll report about me, but they've occasionally done live to tape, but they can then edit that and cherry pick it and then put it in their own context.
So let me step in for a second. So if I hear what you're saying that they're not even that important, is what you're saying.
I don't think they're important. And I think, you know, I have to figure out how to reach those other people those baby boomers in order to win. And there's other ways that we can reach them, which we're doing now. But I just tell you this and then, you know, let other people talk. I have a 28-year-old son, Connor, who's very, very well informed. And I asked him the other day when I was thinking about this issue, I said to him, have you ever seen an evening news show? And he said, no.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think that goes for that generation. It is just not a place where they get their news. So there's an aging group that is getting their news from mainstream media. But,
I think you're right. Let me move to Dr. Rectenwald if I could. Dr. Rectenwald, tell me, answer that same question. How do we handle that? They ignore us or they disrespect us to the point that Mr. Kennedy's saying they will only do something that's taped so they can cut and paste. How do we handle that?
Well, I've been cited by Mr. Kennedy's Children's Health Network many times, the defender, and for that I appreciate that. And I've been on Tucker Carlson 3 times and many other alternative media sites. But I should say, if the day ever comes that the mainstream media begins to respect us, then we'll know we've taken a wrong turn.
Okay.
The mainstream media, let's be real, is a propaganda arm of the state and the ruling class. They're professional propagandists and liars. The media serve up official state narratives that bolster the causes of the regime, as they do with all the wars, with the COVID, with everything else. Frankly, I don't want their respect. I hope they don't approve of me. And of course, they're going to smear all true dissidents. There's no question that all dissidents will be smeared, or they'll utterly black them out. But that's their job. I expect nothing less. And so they also cultivate controlled opposition purposefully.
But hold on now. But we do know that a lot of people who vote do still watch them, right? We know that's true. So are you also agreeing with Mr. Kennedy and saying, you know what, I don't care, they're not that important?
I think they're not nearly as important as they had been in previous years and previous election cycles. We have a huge mediascape of podcasters and X Spaces and all kinds of other venues to reach people. But the mainstream media still matters because they are, in some cases, considered, you know, the papers of record in their various domains. We will be smeared by them, and that's the way it goes. We just have to get our message out more broadly to through other venues.
So let me ask you, Mr. ter Maat, it seems like that you're 2 of the people on this stage kind of think like it's not that important. Are you in the same boat as them, or do you disagree? How do we handle the disrespect and ignoring?
It's obviously not nearly as important as it used to be, right? It is not completely without its significance. And the reason for that is, as you pointed out, for a lot of folks, CNN, the Foxes of the world, they are in some sense media of record. And in that sense, it is not our job to try to please them, right? It is not our job to try to suck up to them to find common ground with their interests or their anointed politicians. It's not our job to see if we can say the right thing to get on their channels. It's our job to see if we can make their heads explode. It's our jobs to see if we can get a little bit of attention in a negative sense. I really liked what Michael just said here. If we get their respect, we know that we have made a significant wrong turn. Look, they are not as important as they used to be. And that is worth bearing in mind. We're going to have to let them go. For those of you in the room with a little bit of gray hair that might miss these organizations, sorry about that. But it is time to let them go. There is a little bit of hard work that exists today that didn't exist a generation ago. Generation ago, you'd be able to hit 2 or 3 media outlets and you were doing a good job, right? Over the past 18 months, I've had to do over 100 podcasts. That's a little bit of work, right? And I'm not suggesting it isn't a great pleasure to last week, shoot the BS with Kim Iverson for an hour. But the truth is that you have to get out there and reach a number of outlets because the media is splintered in a way that it didn't used to be. That means once in a while you're going to make a head explode, and once in a while you're going to find an ally.
So let me go back to you, Mr. Kennedy. If you're saying that they will sometimes take you on, and they will sometimes cut and paste and kind of put you in the light that they want to put you in, does that mean we should avoid them? In other words, am I so worried that if I go on to Fox or CNN or MSNBC, they're going to make me look bad by the cut and the paste? Should I avoid them, or should we still go there and say, who cares? We'll take it. Any press is good press.
Well, my practice is to talk to anybody who will talk to me. There's some times where I'll say, I'm only going to talk if you put me on live. But normally I'm going to talk to anybody. And I've always done that for many, many years. I was the only environmentalist who would go on Fox. I had this weird relationship with Roger Ailes, who was the founder of Fox. But when I was 19 years old, I spent 3 months in a tent with Roger in East Africa. And I had this weird relationship afterwards forever because we were like diametrically opposed on every issue. But I had a great affection for him. And he felt the same way about me. And he was a very, very loyal friend. So he would get all the Fox News hosts to let me on, even when they didn't want to. So I was on Hannity all the time. I was on Neil Cavuto. I was on Bill O'Reilly. And a lot of environmentalists would say to me, why are you going on? It's just legitimizing them. And I said, because I want to talk to their audience. I don't care, who they are. I want to talk to everybody. And I think that's the best approach. I think we live in a democracy. The whole point of a democracy is an inefficient system. And the framers knew that. They knew that totalitarianism was much more efficient. There's a lot of waste and spoilage that goes on in democracy to achieve it, wasted energy. But the advantage that we have over totalitarian systems is that we have free speech. And so ideas, policies get annealed in the furnace of debate and then rise up in the marketplace of ideas and become policy. And that is the one advantage we have over totalitarian systems. And if we stop talking to each other, it's just going to polarize our country and divide us.
So let me
more
move to
and more.
Dr. Rectenwald for good. Dr. Rectenwald, what he's saying to me is that we should still go there anyway, and maybe getting the respect is a good thing. I feel like what you're saying is if they start to say, hey, Dr. Rec, you're the right guy, let me give you some attention, you're kind of like saying maybe no. Am I reading you right or am I reading you wrong?
Well, I mean, when the New York Times went to the Mises Institute to talk to Lew Rockwell, he said, get out of here, you regime puppets. I don't want nothing to do with you. But I'm not Lew Rockwell, and he wasn't running for office. So I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk to anybody that'll listen, and I'll tell them the unvarnished truth in all cases. And I will utter the freedom philosophy with every breath that I make. And that's the key here. We need to make sure we're telling the unvarnished truth in all cases. I noticed I talked
There we go. Okay,
Yes,
you can go ahead.
clap.
Slide in, go ahead. I like truth. It's good.
When I talked to Forbes Breaking News recently, I noticed when I got onto the topic of the war in Israel, they didn't want to hear about it. But I wasn't going to relent because of that, and I will not relent. That has to be addressed. No exceptions. Always, all interventionism we must oppose in all cases, period.
So let me go on to you, Mr. ter Maat. You're saying heads explode. Well, if heads are exploding, they might not want to talk to you if the head's going to explode. I mean, are we still on board or no?
Yeah, we're still on board. Part of the reason that we want to be able to make heads explode is to help define us. And we need to be defining our party and our philosophy and our campaigns in our own context, not in the context of other parties. This is a mistake that I believe that we have made as a party in the past, seeking common ground with Republican politicians or Democratic politicians. We need to be the party of a good story. There really is no such thing as a journalist out there worth his or her salt, even if they are controlled by one party or the other, even if they're controlled by some corporation, distant or domestic, that is not interested in a good story. We're going to be a good story. The reason we're going to be a good story is, number one, we're completely differentiated. We present a different choice. As Michael said, we need to present a completely principled choice. That's going to make us different because there is no such thing as another campaign in this race that's going to be as principled as a libertarian one. We are not going to be one of those campaigns that decides, well, in this theater, we're pro-war, in that theater, we're anti-war. We're not going to be the campaign that decides the Federal Reserve does some things right and some things wrong. We're going to cleave a very hard edge against the other parties because we're going to be distinct. That's what's going to present a good story. The media likes a good story, and that's what we're going to be.
All right, let me move on to the second piece, if I could. This starts with Dr. Rectenwald. I know you've heard this 1,000 times, but how do we handle this? How do we handle the, I can't vote for you, you're a wasted vote, or you're a spoiler, a vote for you is a vote for Trump, or a vote for you is a vote for Biden, or whatever is the thing. I know you hear it. How should we handle that argument? And this is what the legacy voters, right? How do we handle that?
Well, as with everything else, I will tell them the truth. Their vote is already wasted.
Okay.
Does it really matter who wins if we end up with Trump, Biden, or another regime-approved candidate? Really, I will tell voters that unless they vote for someone who espouses the freedom philosophy of private property rights, prosperity, and non-intervention, they're wasting their votes, period. The dominant players are nothing but statists who will expand the state scope and penetration of the federal and central government. They will claim to oppose the military-industrial complex, but send arms to other countries. This cannot go on. So I would dissolve the Zionist lobbies. I would stand up to the Zionist lobbies, or even make them register as foreign agents.
Foreign agents. Wow. Okay.
Whereas none of the other candidates will dissolve the intelligence agencies, or eradicate the security state, or end the regulatory regime. So this is what I'm going to do. And that's
Hold on.
why
I get what you're saying. I'm just kind of curious. How does that stop the spoiler piece? I mean, I get what you're saying, but that's still, if I'm afraid that you're the spoiler, if I believe you're the wasted vote, how does that change my mind, right? As a voter, I'm the legacy voter, right? I've been voting Democrat or Republican for 20, 30 years. How does it stop that?
Well, listen, it's not enough to just tell people what they want to hear. We need to tell them what they need to hear.
Okay.
And
Okay.
what they need to hear is the truth, period. They're throwing away their votes as it is. What are they getting in return? They're getting $34 trillion worth of debt. They're getting a completely runaway economy that's headed towards the drain. That's what they're getting in exchange for their vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me move to Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, I know you hear this. You hear, well, I can't vote for you. I like you, but I can't do it because a vote for you is a vote for Biden, or a vote for you is a vote for Trump, or whatever they're saying each day. How do you handle that to a voter?
Well, I would agree with what was just said, that I think 80% of the American public doesn't want to see President Trump or President Biden run again, doesn't want to see this contest. So if you're voting for them, you're already wasting your vote. You're throwing away a vote. And, aren't we all tired of voting for the lesser of two evils? Don't we want to vote for somebody?
Yep.
Somebody who you like. And my favorability ratings are now higher than President Trump or President Biden or any politician in this country. Mine are 20 points ahead of the other candidates in terms of net favorability. The other thing I say to people is, number one, President Biden does not need my help to lose the election of President Trump. And I intend to take votes from President Biden and President Trump. I intend to win the election. My polling numbers are now in the battleground states are averaging 24 points. And that means, and all I have to do is get to 34. I'm gaining votes by 1 point a month on average since August. All I have to do is get to 34 to win the election. So, that means I have to take about 4.5 points from each of the candidates. And I feel that is within my reach, and that the American people should be able to have a chance to vote for somebody that is actually going to change the system.
So your answer actually is that it's not a waste vote because you can actually win. That's your answer.
Exactly.
Okay. Mr. Maat, how do you handle it? I mean, I know you're out there. I see you out there hustling. I see you doing the work. So I know you're doing the work, and you've got to hear, Mike, I love you, but look, your vote for you is a vote for Biden, or a vote for you is a vote for Trump, or whatever they're going to say. Wasted vote. You hear it, right?
A vote for me is a vote for freedom and a vote for libertarianism. The reason we need to encourage people to recognize that a vote for the legacy parties is a waste of their vote is because when you vote for a Republican, you're sending the signal that the Republican Party platform and parenthetically, the Republican Party actions are okay with you. Is that really the signal that you want to send? Because they assume that when you vote for them, you're in love with them. The same thing with the Democratic Party. So if you are in love with them, knock yourself out. You should vote for them. But the truth is, you're wasting your vote if you don't vote for your values. When you vote for your values and you support someone who's not a member of that duopoly, you force the other parties to take into consideration your principles, your positions, your values, where you want the nation to go. If you don't take advantage of the opportunity to send that signal don't get sent. That's what's so important about it. One of the things that I really enjoy about Mr. Kennedy being in the race is that now we're going to 3 choices. We're going to be up to 4 choices. It gives people more choice in order to better align their own values and principles with the choices of the politicians that they support. The reason this is so important is because we don't want to be stuck in this position where, well, I need to either vote for a duopolist so that I can vote for a winner, or I need to vote for someone as a protest vote.
Yes.
No, we don't want either one of those. We want you to vote for someone that you really are in love with, whose values do align with yours so that you can push the American political system in the right direction.
Well, let me bring that up though. Don't we also want, the protest vote? Don't we also want the person who, and this personal experience, I remember back in 2000, I voted for Nader. And I couldn't tell you one of Nader's policies. I couldn't have told you any of them in 2020. I had no idea what his policy. I knew he wasn't them. So I was like, that's my guy. In fact, I thought that Nader replaced Perot. I thought they were the same party. That is how ignorant I was to politics. I just voted for him. Don't we want that too, though?
Well, we want a protest vote, but we want it in the following way. We recognize that our philosophy, our principles, our solutions, right, are completely counter to the way that our government has been run for the past 3 generations. That's the type of protest that we want, not a blind protest. It's okay if people vote for us blindly as a protest. That's okay, right? But that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is recognizing that our platform is a protest because it's in such stark contrast to the status quo.
Dr. Rectenwald, do you want the protest vote or no? I mean, you're about principle, I know, but if someone's like, I don't know what REC stands for, I have no idea, but he's not one of them, I'm going to vote for him. Is that okay, or is that not good enough?
I'm not going to turn it down. I would take whatever votes we can get. But let's talk about what we really need to be doing here. It's not just, waiting till election day to get votes. We need to create more libertarians at large so that when it comes time for the election, we're not waiting for these protest votes at the last minute. We need to be operating far down upstream from that. We need to be operating and creating the culture that develops libertarians out of ordinary people, because there is a real thirst and a hunger for the libertarian message, and that's what we need to get across.
So let me go to Mr. Kennedy here. You know that there are a lot of people who are happy you're running because they know your name, you're not the other two, you're not the legacy party, and they're jumping on board, and they may or may not know your policies. Are you okay with people just going, hey, love the name, yes? Or do you need to get people to understand what you're standing for?
I mean, the odd thing about what the polling shows is that my strongest support is with young people. And those are people who are not that familiar with my family. The people who are most familiar with Camelot, who lived through that era, and who ought to support me because they also all strongly support me.
Whose phone is that? Please turn off all your phones. So please turn off all your phones. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
I better make sure mine is on.
There we go. Yes, please, go ahead.
That was me calling you.
There we go, yes.
That was good.
I'm sorry,
the people who, who you would think would vote me because they're familiar with they would live through Camelot. They have affection for my family. They loved me when I was the environmental leader, those groups I'm least popular with. And the groups that I'm doing best with are young people who, and also a lot of Trump voters, people who aren't particularly enamored with the Kennedy name. But you know what's wonderful for me is when we do rallies and, we're selling out virtually every venue that we go to. There's thousands of kids there, and they're coming in almost every day. People come up to me with tears in their eyes and say, you're the first person who's given me hope. And in 2013, there was a poll taken of Americans under 35. And they were asked, are you proud of the United States of America? 85% said yes. The same poll taken 4 months ago, 18% said yes.
Wow.
Oh, this is a generation that's completely lost hope in our country. And that's the generation that's coming to my speeches. Those are the kids who stop me every time I walk through a grocery store, through an airport, down a sidewalk. And they say how grateful they are that they had withdrawn from the political process, that they're in because there's somebody finally who's giving them hope for their generation, for their future, and for our country. And, that is, for me, the most touching experience, and the experience for me that's made all of the, there's many challenges in the campaign for my family. There's a lot, for all of these gentlemen, they're all should be tremendously respected because this is a hardship on
Yes, yes, yes,
and they're all
yes.
standing up for something they believe in, which is really important in this country. But for me, all of that, whatever sacrifice that I've made has been compensated 100 times over by seeing these kids come up to me every single day in every venue.
So I
And
appreciate that. I see what you're doing. I want to move to the next question if I could, so we can stick to time. I want to start this one with Mr. ter Maat. This is a hard one that we all deal with. Anyone who's running non-legacy party will deal with this issue. We worry in separate states. We worry across the country. How in the world are we going to handle, Mr. ter Maat, this horribly rigged ballot access system?
Is the ballot access system really rigged against us? I hadn't noticed that.
I made that up. It's not true.
Yeah, it's not true. Lars Mabstead, thanks very much. The system is rigged against us. I view the ballot access issue as a part of an overall cycle, right? We are stuck in this vicious cycle of we need ballot access so we can get wins. We need wins so that we can get more attention, more media attention, more money. We need all of that to gain power so that we can affect the ballot access issue. We need to arrest that cycle and reverse the momentum, right? To make it a virtual cycle instead of a vicious cycle. That's not so easy. It's not even easy to describe, let alone make it happen, right? To make it happen, we need a party apparatus like we do that is serious about a long-term challenge. In this sense, I would point to examples like Ross Perot, who, yes, in 1992 did get a little bit of success,
Yep.
right? But it did not turn into a movement that sustained either the development of a brand that could challenge the duopoly. It did not result in supporting down ballot candidates that believed in what he believed in. It did not result in ballot access, which was your specific question. I
didn't even know what party he was part of.
Well,
I thought Nader was him, but it was the same party. You're right.
Exactly. And that's why I believe that, the way we're set up here inside the Libertarian Party has a great deal more opportunity for success. And it's one of the reasons why it's such a responsibility running as the nominee, as one of us will, running as the nominee for the party, to correctly brand this party for the benefit of down ballot candidates and for future candidates.
Mr. Rectenwald, Dr. Rectenwald, I apologize. Dr. Rectenwald, how do we handle it? This is a problem for us every year. It's particularly in presidential years, but every year we're fighting. Sometimes we're fighting the same state 2, 3, 4 times in a row. It's a problem. How do we handle that?
Well, the only way the Libertarian Party is going to gain and maintain ballot access is by creating an army of libertarians. Libertarians who will knock on doors, who will get signatures and gain trust and demonstrate proof of governance at the local level. I want to make this perfectly clear. I don't think there's a top-down solution for this country. This is not the answer. We need to build power at the local level and invest power in the people there. It is not about a white knight riding into DC and fixing all our problems. That's not going to solve the problems for our country.
Mr. Kennedy, you have a tougher spot and not tough spot, both. You don't have the same infrastructure that the Libertarian Party has, or even the Green Party has, but you have a huge chunk of volunteers. It's got a different issue for you. How do you handle this ballot access piece?
I mean, I'm not worried about ballot access. We're going to have ballot access in every state. We're way ahead of our projections. We're getting 3 times the number of signatures we need almost everywhere we go. And we projected that New Hampshire would take us a week to get 3,000 signatures. We got 5,000 in a single day. In Utah, the state of Utah, or the party in Utah, put unconstitutional restrictions on the length of time that we were allowed to get ballot access, and we challenged that and won in court. But we still got all the signatures we needed in 1 week, and in the middle of a snowstorm. So our signature gatherers had to go out, ask people to take off their gloves, get them to sign legibly. And we're getting a minimum of 60% cushion in every state. We got Hawaii today, and again, we get many, many more, double or triple the number of signatures that we need. So I'm not worried about getting ballot access. We're going to get it. And we have almost 100,000 volunteers right now on the street, and we're not going to have any problem getting ballot access.
Well, there we go. There we go. So let me go back to you, Mr. Kennedy, for a question that I think is a challenging one that we all deal with, but you've dealt with a lot of it yourself, but Libertarians all the time. I remember when I was running for governor in 2018, when I started to do well, all of a sudden, the 2 legacy parties started lying about me. Literally telling me I was a plant from the other side, I was anti this, anti that. They said me, Libertarian Larry Sharpe, I was anti-gun. That was actually a thing they actually said. So lots of lies. Lies come out all the time. It's happened to you also, Ms. Kennedy. How do you handle the lies that come from either media or consultants or operatives? How do you get around that?
Do you mean personally? How do I handle it in terms of how do I internalize it, or how do we handle it in a strategic
Ooh, I like
sense?
both of those. Let's do, you just gave me, I like them both. I was thinking extra, but do internal. That's a great one. How do you handle it? When you know someone, and I'll go one step further, it's happened to me personally. People who I thought were my friends, people who I thought supported me, literally lying about me because they're so scared I might make impact. Starting and getting behind people who are absolutely lying about. How do you handle that personally? Yes.
We love you, Larry. We still love you.
Yeah, but now you do. I'm kidding. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I've had, since I started talking about vaccines in 2005, I've had pretty much a steady campaign of defamation against me. And, you know, people don't want to debate you, and so they defame you. And that's a way of silencing, you know, character assassination is a form of censorship, a strategic form of censorship. And I feel like as long as I'm doing the right thing, that what other people say about me is not my business. I have to be strategic.
But let me push back a bit if I could. It's got it there. It has to bother you. You're still human. When someone who you thought was either your friend or your ally or in some way close to you is either not defending you from the lie or jumping on board. Do you dismiss that person at the end of that person?
I don't. First of all, I try not to hold grudges or have resentments. I think resentments are corrosive if you hold them. It's like swallowing poison and hoping someone else will die. But everybody that I've ever admired in my lifetime, you know, people, historical figures, whether it's, you know, Humboldt to Alexander the Great to Charles Darwin to St. Francis of Assisi, all of them were everybody who achieved something important started out went through valleys of death in their careers where they were despised and hated and turned on by their friends. Oh, if you're doing something worthwhile, that's just part of the cost. And the lower you go, the more beneficial it is. You have to look at that as a gift. You have to look at the betrayals or whatever as a gift and not hold on to them and say, this is part of my journey. And the journey, in order to be worthwhile, has to be difficult. And all of us are on some kind of journey like that. And everybody in this room has made a decision to challenge the orthodoxies. And I'm sure everybody in this room has lost friendships, has lost respects, lost professional affiliations because of your ideas, because you do critical thinking. You're willing to question authority. You're willing to question orthodoxies. And so everybody here knows what I'm talking about. You made a choice, and
Absolutely.
that is important. That's important for the way that that's what we want to achieve in our lives. We want to be able to.
Let me go to Dr.
live
Rectenwald if I could.
courageously.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Rectenwald, you have had this happen to you. Is that what he's talking about? You've lost, some professional issues have affected you, personal issues have affected you. You've had this happen to you too. It's got to bother you, doesn't it? How do you handle that?
Well, I lost my publisher because of my stance on Israel. I lost my fellowship at Hillsdale College because of my stance on Israel. I practice, and I'm going to be honest with everybody here, I will practice rigorous honesty, okay? I'm going to tell you the truth, period. I can tell you how we shouldn't handle the lies that come from the duopoly. We shouldn't handle it by repeating them. We cannot repeat the lies and the propaganda that they spit out.
But hold on, but I want to hold on. Stop. You are going to be removed if you don't stop. Then get out now. Get out now. I will. Sergeant Arms, get rid of him. I will.
We didn't come here to listen to Kennedy. We want to hear the other guys.
I am. Get out. Thank you. What I want to ask you about is tell me personally. Yeah, that was well. Good job. What I want you to do is tell me personally. This has affected you, right? Give me personally.
Personally, it hurts. I've suffered consequences, and I agree with Mr. Kennedy that taking stances that are unpopular is difficult, and you will lose things. You will be stripped of things, and that's the way it goes. But I have dealt with that valley that he was referring to, and I've trudged through it, and you get spiritual regeneration from that. That's where it comes from. You have to be honest, and you have to face it, and you have to deal with the truth at all times. And that's not easy. So I'm saying that, look, I will continue to tell the truth in all cases. Let the chips fall where they may. Thank you.
Great. Michael, how does it deal with you? I mean, you've seen it in the party. People have said things about you that aren't true. That's
not true.
I'm sorry. Only I have said things about you that are not true. Just me. Only I've lied about you, but other people I haven't. But how do you handle that when people who are supposed to be your allies, they sometimes aren't?
Mr. Kennedy said something really important about when those conflicts arise. You need to view those as real opportunities. You're right, Larry. But I got to say, you don't have to wonder what it's like for people to say bad things about you if you're a police officer on the road for 11 and a half years in Broward County, Florida. And I got to tell you, you don't have to wonder what it's like to have people lie about you if you're a registered libertarian the entire time. Yeah, I've lost friends and had bad moments with coworkers, but it is all worth it because in the end, these conflicts need to be something that we adopt as our bread and butter. These are opportunities. And I know that you've had lots of conflicts, Michael, in your work life as well. And I know that you have viewed these as opportunities to set the record straight, to let people know how you feel. It's only when those conflicts come up that it is really the truest opportunity to make your point. Something else I believe needs to be said. In the past, this is my own personal view. Our party has not done a good enough job standing by our principles, even when people are trying to say negative things about us. I do believe that in past cycles, we have lost the opportunity for as much success as we could earn because we have not found the opportunity to cleave that very hard edge based on our principles, that very hard edge against Republicans and Democrats. Might as well warn each other right now. You better put your seatbelt on, because when we're out there telling the truth about how we feel about our values, our principles, our solutions, and how we want to change the way the American government is run, there's going to be a lot of pushback.
Hold on, Mike. I want to ask an important part here, and you tell me if I'm wrong here. I feel like you being a cop in this case may have given you some extra advantage, maybe some things you've learned from having to deal with that. Is that helpful, or is it not? Or am I just making this up?
No, it's completely helpful in the sense that you learn that what you're doing is not because you're looking for, gratification, because of a lot of people think, you're swell. And a lot of people are going to say really nice things about you. It's sort of like being a libertarian. You don't become a libertarian because you're interested in making thousands and millions of friends and everyone's going to say really nice things about you. That just doesn't happen. Now imagine if you become a police officer and a libertarian at the same time. That's a whole lot of meshuggah. I'm lucky that my mother still speaks to me. So you do get used to it, but it reinforces the idea that you don't do these things for yourself. The reason we're libertarians is because we're interested in standing up for others. It's not about us. And I love these guys and Larry, but it's not about us. And it's not, to be honest, I know this is not going to hurt anyone's feelings because that is, after all, what we're discussing. It's not about you folks either. It's about people out there whom we call brothers and sisters. We said this earlier today, for no other reason than the fact that they are fellow Americans. People who are among those least able to stand up to the world's most oppressive criminal justice system, least able to afford the resources that are taken from them by the American government, least able to make ends meet when institutions like the Federal Reserve undermine their ability.
I want to move on back to what Dr.
Thank you.
Rectenwald was talking about, if I could. Now, Dr. Rectenwald, tell me now, you gave me the personal. Now, what do you mean? How does the party then? How do we handle it, right? Not you specifically, your personal, but how do we handle this as this happening? How do we handle lies, right? How does the campaign, how does the party handle lies? Not you personally.
No, the party handles lies by telling the truth. I mean, look, it isn't, this isn't just about representation here and like how we come off and being strategic and coming off and having a nice image. We're talking about vital matters here, vital matters that are dealing a blow to people all over the world. It isn't just the United States that's affected or the citizens here that are affected by United States policy and our proxy wars and our Federal Reserve that's funding these endless wars and you name it. This isn't just about our image. We need to be fearless truth tellers that absolutely cut through everything and get to the bottom of the matter. Okay, the state is a parasite. Let's be real about this. It is robbing people. It is destroying lives. We're looking at a situation in which we have people on the brink of complete destitution and people being murdered using U.S. military aids and bombs. This has got to stop. We cannot allow this. We must stop it. That's the message we need to get out. It isn't enough to be nice guys. I'm sorry.
So you're saying that even though they do the lies, we just keep telling the truth no matter what, right through it. Am I giving you right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just keep telling the truth, make it better, make it more poignant, make it sharper, and make it stronger, and make it stick.
Okay. Mr. Kennedy, I got to ask you, how does your campaign handle it? You've been slandered. Your campaign's been slandered. How does your campaign handle it? Not you personally, but how does the campaign get around it?
We just try to tell the truth.
Dr. Rectenwald, you were correct. There we go. You were correct. I love it. Let me, if I could move to our next question. This is from the audience, and I can start. I'll start with you, Mr. ter Maat. The solution to the 2 corrupt political parties is not 3 corrupt political parties. If you became president, what would you do to weaken the power and influence of 2 centuries of partisan power. Mr. Matt, could you start that?
Sure. There's a couple of things that you need to do. One is obviously lead the federal government to a position of having less power to itself. Part of the reason the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are so very corrupt is because they have so much power. It's the old saying about power corrupting absolutely. That's what happens. So one of the things that we need to do is just per se live out what it is our platform says that we're going to do in a regulatory sense, in a size and scope sense, and especially, as Michael just pointed out, in a foreign policy sense. We need to cut back the footprint of the federal government, both in terms of how much resources it takes, as well as the imposition that it provides on us in not standing up not only for our values, but for not standing up for our civil liberties. That's number one. Number two, we need to go after the ballot access issues, and we need to do so explicitly, in my view. I'm not certain that this is the big political issue that we want to push now as a third party. But if we were in power, absolutely, you got to pound that all day long.
Good. I like it. All right. Dr. Rectenwald, how do we weaken the power really of, again, 2 centuries of these two parties?
We do it by promoting decentralization. The central government is the issue. We need to weaken it. We need to get power away from it. And I would be wary of any candidate that doesn't explicitly promote decentralization and local governance. The object here is self-governance, period. What that means is the state has to disappear. So self-governance is the key. Anybody that's aligned with the big central government, adding layers, tinkering with it, or whatever they're doing, is aligned against liberty. Liberty is our object. That's the key. Politics is just a game that they play to get there, but we're not playing games here.
Okay. Mr. Kennedy, how do we weaken it? How do we weaken this power?
Okay, but is the question, how do we weaken power, or
It
how
could
do we
be.
weaken the power
I
of the
think-
2 political
I
parties?
think Mr. ter Maat was more talking about the system, right? He was talking more about the system. I think Dr. Rectenwald was talking more about the federal government in general. But I think both are the appropriate answer. The question is, how do we weaken the 2-party grip, right? The corruption that's happening right now in our country. We don't want to have a third corrupt party. So is it we've fixed the system? Is it we make the federal government weaker? Both are appropriate, whatever you think.
I mean, well, I don't think fixing the federal government has anything to do with the parties.
Okay.
I mean, if the question is, how do we break the hold of these 2 parties?
Yes.
I think that's what we're all trying to do, which
Okay.
is to try to give the public an alternative. And I think this election, we have a better chance than almost any time in our history, because whoever runs, we're going to run against the 2 least popular political candidates in American history. So both of them would win the record as the least popular candidate in American history if he wasn't running against the other one. And so there's opportunity, I think, here to break this hold. And I think more and more Americans are seeing how corrupt it is, because of what they've done to what they're doing to President Trump. I'm not a fan of President Trump's, but I also don't want to beat him by having him legally removed from the race when, a good portion, maybe 40 or 50% of the American public wants to vote for him. That's what they do in banana republics. They remove candidates from the race that they don't want to run against. I don't think it's right that the Democratic Party, which was supposed to be the exemplary party of democracy around the world, and our country is supposed to be the exemplary democracy. I don't think it's good optics that the Democratic Party really didn't hold primaries this year.
Mm-hmm.
It canceled several of the primaries, including essentially canceled New Hampshire and Florida and other states as well.
So I get where you're coming with.
Yeah, and then the other part of your question is, how does a political party, if you challenge that, then do you then become part of that corrupt system? And I do think that that is a conundrum, because that, George Washington in his farewell address had this very, very beautiful condemnation of partisan politics. And he said, if people gravitate toward political parties, they will become corrupt. They will subsume the patriotic impulse and replace it with a partisan impulse and an impulse of self-interest. And that's a danger to our country. And I think this election really has been a template for what Washington predicted would happen. And I do think, it's a conundrum in our system if it's not a parliamentary system, which does not really have this problem like we do.
I want to move to Dr. Rectenwald. Dr. Rectenwald, you had something you want to say? Please go ahead.
Yeah. I just have to make a point of significant difference with what Mr. Kennedy said in his answer, and that he said he doesn't think that the problem of the parties has anything to do with the federal government. I mean, the thing is, the state is a parasite on the people, and these parties are a parasite on the state. That's how they survive. That's how they live. They're actually deriving their power from the state. That's the problem right there. So they're riding the state and riding the people into the ground. That's what they're about. The state is their vehicle for being parasitic upon us. So
you're saying we have to affect the federal government, and that we have to get rid of the party system, basically.
The thing about the federal government is we need to wean it to zero eventually. We need to make it anemic. The point is not to build it up or to take over it, like to ride it like the other parties ride it. So what we need to do is undo it. We can't ride the state. We need to actually just, eventually abolish it. But in the meantime, our goal is obviously abolition. But in the process, we must, shrink it and find a way to make it anemic. We don't want to feed it. So these parties feed off of state power. We can't do that.
Okay, Mr. Maat, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. It is true that the power of the state is what's driving the corruption inside the Republican and the Democratic parties, but it's not merely a conundrum to say, how are we going to keep this from turning into a third party that's just as corrupt as the others. The idea of a duopolistic system is inherently corrupt. We know that authoritarianism grows in a democracy when a politician stands up and leverages your fear to say, what you really have to fear is not the loss of your civil liberties, but that other idiot coming to power. That's how it works.
Yeah.
It's how it works all over the world.
Yes.
It's how it works here. And that can only work in a two-party system. So the idea is that we have to not merely break these parties because their politicians are unpopular. I appreciate the fact that they are. That is absolutely true, but that's not enough. The fact is that they remain corrupt because it is a two-party system. We need to unrig the system and get ballot access for other parties so that in the long run, we have a multi-party system.
I like it. All right, thank you. Go, please, go, yes.
Let me add something here. And this may not be popular even amongst you, but the party is merely a vehicle. It is not the end here. It is merely a means. The end is something else. What is it? It's liberty. Okay, so the real object is self-governance, not riding the state and making it run roughshod over the public. The point is self-governance, and liberty is the object.
So let me bring that up then. Do you want to say something, Ms. Kennedy?
Well, on reflection, I like what you said about, I think that it is, the worst corruption probably comes from just having two parties. And that if the Libertarians actually won an election, that it would probably make the other two parties less corrupt, because you then would have real competition, and they wouldn't be able to have two monopolies running it. So that makes sense to me.
Thank you. Let me move, since you said it perfectly, to this next question, and I'll start with Dr. Rectenwald, if I could. What message do you take concerning the election of Javier Milei, president of Argentina? Do you have What message do you?
Afuera.
Afuera, yes. Do you
It's
have?
amazing that you would ask that question because this was just on my mind at this minute.
I knew that. I know you, brother. Of course.
What
I knew
does the
that.
Javier Milei moment mean?
Yes.
What it means is, and Javier Milei ran as an anarcho-capitalist, okay? He ran as an anarchist. That's the message. And now he took as his metaphor a chainsaw. Mine's a wrecking ball. That's what I mean to take to the state, a wrecking ball. That's what we need to do. It isn't enough to just tinker with the federal government. The federal government needs to be smashed. So all of these things, he said, afuera, 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 and it's working. This is working in Argentina, and it will work here. We can do this. Let's take it apart.
There we go. Mr. ter Maat, please.
People are ready for this message. They're ready for this message in the United States. I think a lot of you know that I got my feelings hurt earlier this year when, despite having lots and lots of videos out there that are getting a few thousand views at a pop, just by emulating this guy Milei, we got 1.5 million views in the first 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm putting out original stuff all the time. How come I'm not getting 1.5 million views for my original stuff, right? Just making fun of, and not making fun of, but emulating Milei. He is, after all, an Austrian economist delivering a cool, clear, crisp message. The message, I believe, the lesson to be learned is that he was not running against other politicians. He was running against the way things have been done in Argentina. Remember that Argentina was the 5th most prosperous nation in the world 100 years ago on a per capita basis. That is a nation that has declined hard. People are sick of it. And I believe that increasingly Americans are recognizing that we are also going in a bad direction. And we all hope that before we descend as far as Argentina has, that we eventually recognize that we need to go in a profoundly different direction. He did not water down his message. He ran based on principle, not based on, oh, that other guy is, really unpopular, so this is my big chance. No, that's not what it was all about. It was about actually changing the way government works in Argentina, and that's the attitude that we need to adopt here.
There we go. All right. Mr. Kennedy, what message do you take?
I would
from this?
agree with what's been said. Milei had a populist message. He was running against corruption. He was running against crony capitalism. He was running against an entrenched oligarchy and that has dominated politics in Argentina for many generations, in which certain families dominate the country and trade the executive branch back and forth with each other. And, he was representing common people. And I think it's heartening that he won. And I do like, I think his rhetoric, the clarity of his message is really inspiring. And I love his energy. I think it's heartening for our country that kind of, optimistic, idealistic populism can actually prevail in a very entrenched system.
Here we go. Dr. Rectenwald, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, Milei was running not just as a populist, not just trying to get the popular will behind him or having the popular will behind him. He ran explicitly as an anti-statist. He said, and I quote, and I'm sorry if this offends anybody, I wipe my ass with the state. That's what he said.
He did say that's true.
And so this is what we need to run on. This is not a message of just, political headwinds. We're talking about a principled statements that he made all together, all the way down the line, based on the Austrian School of Economics and based on anti-statism all the way through. That's what he ran on, and that's why this is the message for today. It's no longer, we don't have time for anything less right now. That's what we must aim at.
There we go. All right. I want to get one more question if I could in. And this is, someone obviously was watching your lunch today, Mr. Kennedy, because the question is, what is the most durable and moral framework for managing the commons? And if so, how do you prevent corruption over time? Tough one, I know, but
I mean, what I think is that, when you're regulating and I was talking to Chris Rufo about this today, that there are examples around the world where the commons has been protected successfully through privatization. It's not, there's a lot of kind of bad side effects. In England, for example, many of the rivers are privatized, but you need to, it denies access to those rivers to common people. So to fish in England in a salmon stream, you may have to pay $20,000 a day. In this country, couldn't do that. Everybody has access to that stream. There are fisheries that have been privatized in, for example, off of Australia, marine fisheries, and the fishery very, very well. I think probably the way that the most obvious way to do that is that you need a regulatory framework in the commons. You need a framework that allows use of the commons, allows even consumption of the commons, but make sure that it's in the interest of all the people. So you can dam a river, you can get a permit to dam a river. You have to make a showing that it's going to benefit all of the people who are benefiting from that river. And that's how we do it today. We say, yeah, you can put pollution into the river, but you have to pay a price for it. The best way to do it is through market forces, that you pay for any cost you impose on the commons. But that would take a whole new regulatory framework. Right now we do it through a permit system, and unfortunately, the agencies that administer those permits are captured by the industries they're supposed to regulate. So they allow those companies to break the law all the time. That's what, this Department of Environmental Conservation and EPA did with General Electric Company. They knew that it was illegal. You can't do it. You can't put toxic chemicals into a waterway no matter what. And they let them do it because GE had political power. So,
okay. Let me grab Mr. ter Maat, if you would. Can you answer that question? You want me to repeat it, or you got it?
No, I get the basic gist here.
Okay.
Look, the problem with the way that our nation and around the world, nations have managed economic issues with regard to the environment, with regard to management of the commons. The problem is not that, once in a while we privatize something that didn't work out perfectly. No, I'm sorry. That's just a complete misreading of history. The problem is that we haven't privatized enough. The problem is that courts and private capitalistic markets have not been able to take over enough of these properties, enough of the commons, and therefore created a method by which to internalize these costs. So for example, in the example that was just cited, somebody pollutes the river and they know that it's illegal and they go ahead and they do it anyway. And it's very difficult to hold them accountable. Yeah, in the system that we have today, it's very difficult to hold them accountable because we don't have someone downstream with private property rights who gives a damn, who will bring that tort, who will bring that case to court. We need courts and markets to do their job. That means we need more privatization, not less privatization. It is true that the system that we have today, if you just, once in a while privatize a property here or there, or once in a while you resegregate something that is ostensibly in the commons and you privatize it and you spin it off to a group of citizens, and then it doesn't work so well. That's right, because our system is not set up correctly to bring these cases through the court system and through negotiations in the private market.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question about that?
Good.
How would you, for example, privatize the air? And, which is a key part of the commons. And then I would add another issue, which is that, I'm a litigator. I've brought thousands and thousands, over 1,000 lawsuits. And they're very expensive. And most people can't afford them. And most lawyers won't bring them unless there's a big return. if you're using a stream and you're washing your clothes in it, your cattle are drinking from it, and pollution kills a couple of your cows, it's almost impossible in this country to bring a lawsuit that would pay the expenses of the court case in order to justify minor injuries that, I can't use that river anymore. I can't swim in it because there's pollution in it.
Okay.
I'll go someplace else to swim. And what is the damage for that? Is it $1,000? Is it $2,000?
Let me see
It's
if I can
hard
get
to
a
press
answer.
that in
Let me
court.
get some answers. Let me first do what Termat, then I'll go to you, Dr. Weld. But I think he was questioning.
well,
He was questioning.
But
Go ahead,
I'd like to
I'll
hear
follow
about
you.
the air
Follow up.
first.
Yeah,
How
go
do you
Yeah,
privatize?
Termat, you okay?
He wants to go first.
Go ahead.
Let it go. We'll,
Okay.
Yep, no worries.
I mean-
Dr. Weld, go ahead, please.
I'm right here.
With all due respect, this notion of the commons is a quaint but antiquated term. It comes out of the 18th century and the enclosure laws and in Great Britain. And it's not really that doesn't really pertain to the situation we have. What we have is state property or state controlled property, so-called. That is not commons per se. Now, the best custodian of property is the property owner, the rightful property owner. The state, and there is no commons, it's state property. The state fails miserably at protecting property, including on environmental issues. If you want to know the worst environmental polluter in history, it was the Soviet Union, where there was no private property. That's where you had the worst environmental record of all time, including the Chernobyl accident. So look, we don't need to have more protections of this. We need privatization. Who will best take care of property? People who own it. Who is the best custodian of your home? You. And so privatization.
But who would own the Hudson River? Would you give it to all the boats that use it, all the commercial boats, the recreation boats, the fishermen, the swimmers? Would each one? Who would own it?
You could have joint stock companies that would own that, and that would, of course, they would take money for the use of it. And this would not be some sort of wealth draining situation, because if we had privatization, we're going to have so much more wealth than we have right now. It's
So then you would have a board of directors of that company that controls who can use the Hudson and who can't for every purpose.
I mean, you're going to have you need to have privatization and such that you would have a joint stock company that would give out use leases for that property. Yes.
So you would have a board of directors that could tell you, we're not going to let you sail on the river.
They wouldn't do that because that's how they would make money, through these leases. It's not like they're going to sit there and protect it and not let anybody use it. That's not how it works. So once you have this kind of,
presumably they could block some people from access to the river. So you'd have to pay this company in order to catch a fish.
we're talking a nominal fees, most likely. The thing is,
right now you don't have to pay anybody to fish in the Hudson.
with all due respect, the regulatory capture that you refer to all the time, the problem is not these corporations, this boogeyman that comes in and destroys the public property and so forth. It is the receptacle for those people. That's the regulatory agencies themselves. That's where the capture comes from. If you get rid of them, you get rid of the capture. So it isn't like the state has done a great job in regulating property. In fact, it's done a miserable job. So why should we trust it to do it any further? As I said, in the Soviet Union, everything was state-owned. Look what happened. It was a total disaster.
You would privatize the air?
Now, the air
Hold
is
on.
that's a non-starter. I mean,
let me move to Mr.
that's a
Termat if
non-
you want to say anything on this one. Dr.
Yeah.
Director, I want to give Termat a spot if he wants. Do you want to say anything, Mr. Termat?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that there are ways to privatize relatively large things. The air is a particular challenge. I'll give you that one. But when it comes to things like rivers, dams, big projects, you do not grant a monopoly. You assign property rights in various bits and pieces. And so you don't have, one single organization controlling access. It also needs to be said that people at a local level do have a right to come together and bid in a way that brings people together, either in a stock corporation or partnerships, or however. Now, some people would call that a homeowners association. Some people would call that an LLC. Some people would call it a county. Some people would call it Nebraska. Some people would call it Exxon. There are different forms that can be created when Americans come together to acquire these relatively large assets, even though they're pieces of rivers. Not, it's not, you're not going to grant a monopoly over
We
an
are
entirety of a
up
river.
As a
against
matter of
time.
fact, the state is what creates monopolies, period.
We are up against time, so I want to shift us, if we could, now to our 90-second closing statements, please. Just want to shift now. If we could start with Mr. Kennedy, please, 90 seconds.
Well, thank you for having me. My campaign is about redressing many of the issues that that libertarians traditionally are concerned about, ending the war machine, ending this corrupt merger of state and corporate power, protection of freedom of speech, of all the rights in our Constitution, ending the chronic disease epidemic, which is an assault on all of us, and restoring the moral authority of this country around the world. And I'm very, very happy to be here and honored to be on this stage with these two distinguished gentlemen. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Rectenwald, 90 seconds, please.
Well,
Sorry,
isn't
Dr.
this
Rectenwald.
what liberty is all about? We had a chance to actually have a debate, a real debate in the realm of ideas, and that is what we have to do. So let's take it from there and expand our liberty from here. Let's expand liberty as much as possible today, not tomorrow. And how do we do that? I argue that it's really about self-governance. We need to try to resume and take self-governance as our main principle. That's what we want to do. We don't want to be governed. And we don't need to be governed. That's even more important. We don't need to be governed. We are not the waifs of the state. We do not need to be their little children that they would like to make us out to be. This infantilizing sense of the citizen, where the state lords over them in every respect. So it is time to begin, at least begin this process of vesting power in ourselves locally and throughout, across networks, in localities and across localities through networks. And that will be undertaken by virtue of several things.
10
Local
seconds.
government, but also, I should say, using parallel currencies and wresting power and eroding the power of the Fed's monopoly over
And the
money.
Fed, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, Mr. ter Maat, 90 seconds.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Mr. Kennedy. Thank you, Michael. This was a lot of fun. We've had a number of different questions, I think with all the same answer. We were talking about what happens when people lie about you, what happens when they disregard you, how do you break the corrupt cycle, how do you gain ballot access, how do you change the way the politics works in the United States? And I think the answer, I think we all recognize that a lot of our answers were not only the same among the three of us, but they seem to start to feel like the same from one question to the next. The answer is that we need to run a campaign that's completely based on our principles as libertarians. That is naturally going to lead to a number of conflicts. There are a lot of people out there that don't want to hear it. And when we start to gain traction and success, oh boy, put your seatbelts on. They are really not going to hear it. When you run a platform based on principle, you have given up your opportunity to say, well, I support an anti-war message, except in this conflict. I support a deregulation effort, except I need to knuckle under corporations in this particular realm. I don't like it when science and the government are all mixed up together, except in this one circumstance. When you give that up, you're naturally going to get a lot of pushback, and that's our opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I want to say thank you to all three of you for an amazing conversation. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your questions. Have a great night. Okay.
Sorry.
The gala will be in about 20 minutes, right next door for those of you going to the gala. Right there, 20 minutes. Thank you.